Okay, here we go. Let me get out the camera. So I'm going to show you a couple things, a few examples. This one, I'm going to show you my original Adolf Bernd that I did in a class with Peter. It's right after I started calligraphy. It's not anything I ever used because I tend to be messy on my lines. When you do lines this narrow, I'm not able to keep them quite that straight. I thought tonight I'll work on redoing this. I sketched it out to show you the painting, but that was from early on. I have another one, and where did I put it? I got everything out, so let me just see where I set it all. One second, it must be over here. And then this was the last one I did, but as I said, I have trouble keeping the lines all that even. And the thing is, I wrote this out in reasonably spaced copper plate. Sorry, I gotta admit to someone. And Susan, can I make you a co-host so you can admit people?
Of course, I'll watch for that.
Okay, let me just find your name to make you co-host.
All right, happy to help.
There it is. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
So, but when I made these wider, so to leave a white line, they got a little crowded. So this is another one I want to redo. But I think with a lot of practice, I would get neater. So that's just something to aim for. I do fine on the wider stuff, but it's these narrow white lines. Okay, I'm going to show some of the things. I was lucky enough to purchase the books that Peter published, and I don't think there are any left. It'd be great if they reprinted this, but I have not heard that there are plans. And Peter taught at Letters California Style, our conference, and he had these books there, and I made sure. Well, he had the first one there, and then I bought the other one later. Not sure when I bought that, but Adolf Bernd, he's a German graphic artist, and in his spare time, he did these letters and numbers. And what Peter says about these is it was his use of color that was so, that Peter really finds beautiful. And I will say this camera, it makes this a little darker than it is. And let me try turning on the light. That lightened it up a little bit. So, and one thing we'll go over is these colors are not bright colors. They are slightly dulled down, subtle, and it makes them all go very well together. The different shades, and we'll talk about how that dulling down happens. And look at these great little, a great dove there. Here's several A's, and this is a Roman study group, but you don't have to do Romans if you don't want to on these, but you can see that looks a little more Ancho-like. Here's a great A. A D, a versal style, the type you'd see in a illuminated manuscript. F. And some of these were definitely black letter. Just some real fantasy letters. And just look at those narrow, his lines are so narrow. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So narrow, but just they're straight and look really good. This is one of my favorites. The colors are so beautiful in that. And here's another one he did. Look how he decorated the broad edge with those curves and diamonds and little rectangles.
Kristi, do you know how big the original pieces were?
You know, they are fairly large. Peter did tell us, I don't remember, but it might be written, here it is, 45 centimeters high, 60 centimeters wide. And I can't tell you off the top of my head. I always have to convert that on the computer to inches, but they were fairly good size.
Like 18 by 24,
Okay.
probably.
Yes, that
Inches.
sounds about what I pictured from Peter telling us. And then he has words. Let me back up a little.
Yeah.
And just look at these. We'll talk more about these later, but just look at his decorations on the outside. Just really added to it. And here he's got plant life. I've been collecting leaves on my morning walks with my dog, and I thought I want to put I had just thought of that, but maybe I was influenced unconsciously by this. But I thought I want to put a leaf shape into one of mine. Here's an R. Look at these rectangles on the sides, and the colors are always separated by these white lines, and that really makes the colors stand out.
You've got a question about how you make the white lines, whether you use masking tape or not.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
really, you'll be teaching tonight how you do that with paper.
I gotta say that Peter thought some of these looked like resist was used. Bernd passed away a while back, but his wife insisted he did not use resist, that he just painted up to the lines. So it's, you know, she didn't necessarily know, but it sounded like they were, you know, she paid a lot of attention when he was working. So it's not clear. But in the class with Peter, we just painted up to the lines.
Gemma Black did the same thing as well. Like she would have put pencil lines down, but that was your border and you just painted up to that.
Yeah, and we did that in Art Deco too with Gemma, just painted up to. So just let me get this a little closer. Just designs. And one thing we did in Peter's last class, and I couldn't find my samples, is we made little shapes like this, not in the letters, but for getting our colors, coming up with our color palette that we wanted to use in our letter. So keep that in mind. And you're welcome to take a screen print if you want. This book's no longer available in print. If you need me to show anything, if you need it for working off of. Now here's another one, just some lines, decorations. Love all these diamonds and little decorations here.
Do you have a favorite letter from the book, Kristi?
I just had that one page that I had said was my favorite. It's not a letter per se, a piece. Yes. I think it says peace.
Yes.
And the colors really are to me so beautiful. And, you know, it's reddish and green. Those are contrasting colors. So they just really make each other stand out, being next to each other. This one to me has a kind of medieval look. Mm-hmm. Here's another kind of a black letter look. And so when I did my letter, I think I used this somewhat to inspire my original V. I put some diamonds in there. I varied it somewhat, but some of the same. And just look at those lines there. They're just lines, long, thin rectangles. And you can do Google Adolf Bernd letters, and you'll find some. I didn't find that many of his. I found a lot of people, their own version, but there was a lot of nice stuff out there. I found a few of his actual drawings. And then here's just script. And I love this up here, down here. Again, I'll get a little closer. And over here on the left, just shapes. And notice that edge, it's kind of bulbous, and there's the same shape on those sections. And here's that same shape. So those shapes are repeated. These are repeated, but the colors are just slightly, he's got a little pink in here. These are just teal and maybe a dark green, a darker version of teal. And then here, the darker version and pink. And then all these colors here. And
So
he
there's no real
Sorry.
shadows on his letter forms, and he just makes that with the background.
yeah, he
color.
does the white borders on them.
Kristi, you remember Peter said to limit it to 2 colors and then 2 complementary colors, and then you mix for the third. I took the class. I don't remember right now.
You know, I don't remember him saying limit it to 2, but that could have been our exercise that we did, because
Yes,
Adolf
I
did
remember
not.
that.
Well,
Right.
some of these, maybe he did limit them to 2 and then mix colors. But
Right.
here, he's got a yellowish and a teal and a purple here and a pink. So some of those could be mixed, but I think he used at least 3 colors is my guess. So, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of our exercises we didn't limit to 2. And I could not find my notes from the last class. I found my notes from the class I took at the beginning of 2005 when I was new to calligraphy, but I did not find the most recent. And just here's a Z, and notice he likes to put crosses in here and other things just to add interest.
His graphic elements are so nice, you know.
Yeah, and here's the 3, just with these lines on here, kind of like the veins on a leaf. And that color, and the other thing I learned is he uses cold press watercolor, not hot press. Cold press adds a lot more life, is the way it was explained to me. Hot press is great when you're doing lettering with a dip pen, but for actual painting, cold press yields the best results. And then just this one, look at all these elements on this one page. There's a black letter B. It kind of reminds me of the Bruges B, and just other elements, shields, animal, a medieval looking animal. I'm gonna make a note here. And then this one, look, he actually is writing words in this one. German words with his letters. Look at that S down there, interesting letter. And then this one, he's got this letter and he's got a symbol down here. And then here is just shapes and decoration. So he's got quite a variety. He did so many of these. So there are 2 books of these, but he had far more than this. Just this is what Peter picked out for the books.
Alpha and Omega.
Yeah, and thank you. And just a 5 and some alphabetical characters. And just here, some curves, painted one color on one side. And the other thing, I'll try to hold it real still. He's going light and dark. So here's really light, and then he lets more color come in here. So if his stuff, and here, light to dark, it's not static. It's very interesting, his color. And then a little donut here with little curves. And look at that, beautiful. And just another little shape. And here he's just got rectangles with colors in them. And to me, this is a lighter version of his palette. These may be the colors, probably are the colors he used in this, light tinted way down. And then he's got the little leaf garland in the. Okay, so that is it for this one. And these were on exhibit. Peter borrowed these from first he talked to the wife, and then it was the granddaughter he was working with. And they were able to get these on loan for exhibits. And then I'm not gonna spend a huge amount of time going through, but let me just quickly go through these. This was the second exhibit that they had. I believe it was another exhibit, and here's just his book, and I can't get any further back than that, but here's a piece. I think it's a detail, and you'll see the piece on another page that's just blown up. And if you can ever get your hands on these books, they're great. And here's more of like a copper plate D. And just, to me, this is mainly shapes. And here, this could be an M, maybe not, but just, it reminds me of trees in a forest, the way it's done. With the green coming off, it's just so interesting. Wouldn't it be nice to know the name of that? I don't, I'll look, see if Peter names these in the back. No, so maybe they didn't have names. Again, X. Beautiful designs, shapes. And the colors just blend together. And here, this is, if you had the true full non-mixed color, it would be red and green. And they're just mixed, and they contrast and look beautiful together. And this one, I did see this on the internet, and beautiful C. And it looks like CS. I think possibly it may have said it was CS. But you know what? Then again, I've been reading about Emer Reiner too, and I could be mixing it up. So it looks like CS, but you can look it up. And here's more, just look at that detail. And another thing that breaking it up like that does, it makes it easier to paint. Obviously, Bernd didn't have a problem with painting larger spaces. But for those of us that aren't master watercolorists, smaller spaces are easier to paint and have look good. And look at these are just lines. They're just lines, and they just taper off. And here's the enlarged detail. D, initial D, CH, looks like a monogram. I think that's CH.
That looks like the first alphabet of Indian alphabet. That
Oh, does
CH
it?
thing. Yeah. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And then here, beautiful.
Yes.
Do you think, so normally he did not gild these, but this one, there is a talk about that in the book, but this one has silver foil on it. And here's just blow-ups of how he used the silver foil and here. Just little spots. So if you have little scraps of metal leaf, you could add that on. And look at this. And just, here's a line. And it's two colors, and he just comes down. It's not a perfectly straight line. It's so much more interesting this way. And here's little, you know, between the colors, he has the white lines, and then just some lines hanging off of there. And then all this in here. And then when he does this line, he comes all the way through and breaks the colors there and darkens them. I think this may be a W, black letter. Or there are other versals that actually, I think that looks like one of the other versals. And then B, just look at those lines going through it. And look at that there, and then coming out over here. And then again, those lines. And to me, a lot of these little lines he does represent his palette. He tints it down and it represents the palette. And then look at this. This is very different. And I think it's a letter, maybe an A, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else can see it more than I can. And then obviously an S. I think this is an E. And look at just little rectangles over here. They're the detail, and he repeats it over on this side. And here he left white space in here. And this may be an AT. I think it looks just decorations. And he goes from, here's a really pale, muted gray or green, grade green here, and then a much brighter, it's not much brighter, but compared to this, a brighter, yellower green. And it's contrasted against the purple. Here's a blue and red. And it looks brighter to me on my screen. It looks brighter than it is in the book. He did always have a duller version of the colors. They're gorgeous. They're just not full brightness. An R. I think that might be an OR. And look at those designs there, and just they come off, even off the, so these are squares lined up this way like diamonds. And
It's
then
like fabric.
He's got these just like that could be done with a broad edge, just for squares.
Kristi, did you mention what year these were done?
Well, you know, I think some were done in the 1920s. He died in, I think, he was born in 1909. And he died in 1994. But he went to he was a guest trainee at Masters Art, which I assume is in Germany. And then he worked at a foundry to start. But I remember Peter telling us these were not his work pictures. These are his hobby. This is what he did for himself. And there were many, many of these paintings. And I think he did them up till his death. So I think I heard at some point 1920, and then I think they probably went through 1994. And I can do some more reading on this and share that information. Here he's actually got a snake. So he has a few of these that have actual illustrations. We saw the dove, the snake. Here's some more, just letters. And I love this up here. Diamonds, and then just this little, I'm sure there's a name for that little shape right there. I'm not sure of the name, and just a small, simple shape here. And look how those, a dot there and came out. And he's got 1457, I believe. So, and there are words here, I can't read them. So this was, I think, commemorating something. Trees, very fantasy trees with an S, a black letter S. And let's see what it says. This one says, G is the first half, it's 14th century Burgundy initial from Schoeffer's Psalter. So he got that, was inspired by a manuscript, and in Mainz, which is in Germany. And then look at this one, doing a cartwheel, Dusseldorf, Flemish, around 1700. So he was inspired. We can get inspired from Bernd, and he was inspired by many. And I'll say, when they talk about this being Flemish, some of this reminds me of the artwork in Bruges. Brody did one. It wasn't one of his favorite he talks about, but he was representing a joker for a brewery, and he had similar top, and then his B had these same, where the top of the black letter B goes off, he made it to look like these little joker tops. And I think they were called jesters. I call it a joker, jesters. And here we go. This is inspired by Wittenberg, 1534, but it's inspired by that. That's not when he did it, obviously. And I think this one right here, it says it was done in 1989. This one was done in 1990. So this one does have dates. I don't think the first one did, but this one has dates. And Strasbourg around 1230. So he's just getting shapes and symbols, medallions that he found in Strasbourg. And here's that same, this is what Peter had us do, this palette. When I took the class with him the first time, we did not do that, but the second time, I'm glad I took it again. We did that for our color studies. And here. And I would say this is an R and an A. And this was also from Strasbourg and done 1993. And it says he used an eraser to make streaks within the colors. So this, you can see streaks in there. He did them with an eraser. And look at those beautiful details. There's some glare on the, let me turn off the light, see if the glare will go away. Anyway.
Yes, better.
Here's a blow up of his, so here's flowers in here, and here's a blow up of that flower. So that's Berdt's work. And I gave you handouts, and those had work that I found on the internet from Bernd. And I want to show one picture. Let me, I'm pretty sure I've got, yeah, I'm going to share my screen. And let me get this one. This is a piece, it was an advertisement for the Memphis Calligraphy Guild, obviously, and one of their members was teaching this workshop. And I just love these letters that she did. Now, I suspect she studied with Peter, because Peter also taught these very loose versals. And look how they're divided up, similar to the way Bernd would divide them up. And that I found on the internet also. So just, there is so much you can do with this. And when I started mine out, when I was new to calligraphy, and I started out with this one, I wasn't copying exactly, but I was very heavily inspired by Berdt's, one of his letters. But now I'm thinking, and I drew it again so I can talk about painting, and I drew it very similarly. But the more I looked at this, I thought I would like to do this a little more stylized. Some of Peter's work now is much more loose, like those versals. And so, and also on this, I have metallic, probably metallic wash in the middle of these diamonds. Okay, so with that, what I'd like to start with is you find a letter, and I send out the handouts again so we can look at how our letters are traditionally drawn. Some of you can do it from your head, but you also have the handouts that you've been given. See, this is Nimoy, but it's similar to Marcia Brady's. I think I passed Nimoy's out at an earlier study. But so what I did was I started here, and I'm going to just go in a little bit. I started with a sketch of an A. And first I drew a square, and I thought that I would make it the exact dimensions of an A. But then I started playing around, and I took Susie Behringer's press and release class a week or so ago, and 2 weeks ago, and I just started doing an A similar to what she did. And I will say he's got some fun A's. The last class I took with him, he had some fun A's. So I started with that just as inspiration, but you'll see later I got away from this. So here's my first one. I thought, well, I don't really think that looks like an A. And let me see if I can focus a little more on this. So I wasn't real thrilled with that, but it gave me ideas for how to do a letter. And so then I moved on. I made this side a little thinner, this side thicker. And I started putting little rectangles here instead of the diamonds. I put a rectangle horizontally, vertically. And let me say, feel free to be working while I'm showing this. You could start sketching your own. And what preparing for this session did, I got out a little tiny blank journal. I thought I'm going to start playing around. When I'm on the plane in a week, in a little over a week, I'm going to be sketching letters. It's fun. And then you'll have somewhere, you'll have inspiration for doing your more finished piece. And then I played around. I added that what we do on, and I forget what these serifs are called, but I added the little bulbous serif. And I made this side thinner and this side thicker. And then I thought, you know what? I want to go back to the regular structure of the A. So here's the A. And I started playing with that. But I'm using what I had started to figure out. So I'm just starting to play. And I think I'll do a whole page of these A's before I come up with one I want to enlarge. But this is where if you go on the internet and do a search and get examples and look at those handouts, that's what I tried to give you, was the handouts so that you could be inspired by those. And again, look at those loose versals, like that last one that I showed for that Memphis. Any of those that appeal to you, any letters that appeal to you, play with those. But I thought I want to do an A. I don't know why, but I just picked that. So go ahead and play with that. So I'm going to give you maybe 15 minutes, and I'm going to be playing with letters here, and you go ahead and play with letters, and feel free to ask questions at any point. And then as we go along, we'll talk about what other steps we want to take. So go ahead. Thank you. And I will say you don't need this for these thumbnails, but I did, because I wanted to work with regular structure on this. I put a graph paper behind just to help me keep my structure. But some of these I didn't work with the traditional structure. So whatever works for you. And definitely you don't need to do that on these thumbnails unless you want to. I think I will. So I'll just say a couple things. So when I did my first letter, I did have a few real subtle curves in there, but now I'm trying to put more curves in. I definitely have small, thinner wasting, thinner in the middle than at the ends, which we haven't talked about that much in study group, but those who work with Trajan caps know that you just make it a little narrower and it looks like a column. That adds an elegant look. So I'm doing some of that in here, not as pronounced, but, and then this one, I think I'll put a box around it like a medieval decorated letter. I'm thinking about that anyway. These are just thumbnails, but I'm putting the curves in there too. So I don't have so many straight lines. It just adds interest. I added this little hat here. I don't know if I'll keep it, but it's kind of fun right there. And then I added a similar shape here. I think I'll vary it a little and have the shape more just at one end. But this is playing around, coming up with how these will finish. So I'll give you a few more minutes. I'm going to check the chat. Oh, and Isabella tells us the one that looked like a CS is a Swabacker S. Thank you, Isabel. And Jane said, if you have Uncommon Numbers book, there's a set of 3 of those. Adolf Berd's works are on the covers and on page 27. I hadn't noticed that. Thank you. I will check that out. And Carrie Morrison says Pinterest has a lot of inspiration for Adolf Bernd letters. And I'm sticking with Romans here, but I'm thinking another time I might want to put some fracture and Gothic A's, play with those too. Excuse me, I have to get my dog who's trying to grab things. Can you take the dog? Honey boy, go. He's eating something. Okay, so I'll give you one more minute and then we're going to start talking about color. And what I'm trying to do here is just get us all going on this. We can play with it later when we have more time, but I want to give you the basics to get you going. And I'm going to grab my water and for my paint, and I'll be right back. the trick is where to put the watercolor when I've got this document camera, but I will find a place. And just to go over paints, most of you have experience with painting, but I'm just going to go through this. Normally I spray these, and I don't like to clean my palette. You can see I like all my paints dulled down a little, but I have, I'm going to just add water. Normally I have a spray bottle, I spray them, but just because I'm where I'm working, I'm just going to put a few drops of water just to, and basically with Peter, we worked with the primary colors. So I'll get a red, a yellow, and blue. And I took several of these blues and wetted them, but I am going to just do French ultramarine. I'm going to stick with that. I don't want multiple blues here. And just because I might decide I want ochre instead of this yellow, I put some. And we're experimenting. So if you change what colors you want to use, no problem. And I grabbed a paintbrush and I grabbed a 4, but if I were working normally, not here so confined and in a course setup, I would have several different brushes, because some of these I think I maybe would want a finer one. This one I'm probably fine here, but if some of my letters, I probably would want, I probably have narrower. So this is my V that I drew, and I'm just going, I did this so I can go through the color. And I have it here, and I'll probably demo on this. This is sketch paper. I also did it on watercolor paper, but I don't really think, I don't need that light box. I don't really think you can see the pencil well. So I think I'll just paint on the sketch paper. I just won't use a whole lot of water. And on my watercolor paper, I put the box up here out of the way, but on my original, just playing around on sketch paper, I have a box down here. And that's where I'm going to play with my colors. So primary colors, I've got this red, which, as I said, I don't clean my palette all that well, so that's not as bright as it normally would be. I'm going to use the ochre instead of the Windsor yellow. And I'll use the French ultramarine. That's what I think right now. I can always change if I don't like them. Those are my 3 colors I've decided to use. And what we did with Peter is we would dull these and we would make tints. And if you, so I'm going to go through these, and I'm not going to do this with all. We have limited time. So Margaret asked what my red is. It's cadmium red, but I think it's not that clean because I think it should be brighter. It actually is not, it looks a little brighter on the camera than it is on my paper. With Peter, we did whole exercises, and I'm going to let you do some of these exercises later. You might want to make a note. You can mix white and lighten them. You can mix black and darken them. The main ones that we did with Peter that were really nice exercises that were new to me were how we diluted the color, how we made it more subtle. And some of the people in here that have taken his class before can chime in. I have just a couple methods to show you, but if others want to chime in, we can make notes on all the different methods. We wanted to make these more subtle. I picked colors that are rather subtle to start with. But what we would do is, there's what we call neutral tint. And of course, I didn't think to get that out, but there's neutral tint, and there are several different neutral tints, and they have there's a warm neutral tint, a cool neutral tint. They come in a little bitty tube, and you just add a touch of that to them. So we did exercises with Peter where we did a mixing in of neutral tint. The one I'm going to demo right now is we mixed in the opposite. So with red, the opposite would be green. And to get green, we're going to mix that blue and the yellow. So I'm just going to go up here. I will clean a little bit off so that I'll have a better demo for you. You know, I have to laugh. A lot of teachers tell you clean your palette. Occasionally some tell you they never do. And I just like the never do, because I really like my colors not to be perfect. So I'm going to mix some of this ochre. Clean my brush. Get some of this French ultramarine, and it looks like I really added too much water to it, but I've got some here in the corner that I can take. And there's this is why I usually spray these. I don't get carried away like I did with the dropper. Okay, so there's my colors. And then I am just going to mix those together. And I'm going to blot my brush on I've got a napkin here. I'm blotting the brush so I won't add even more water. And I'm just going to go over here and start mixing. And that's how I get my green. And I will say, you can do color charts, because certain blues mixed with certain yellows give you a specific green. And this looks like that real grayed down green that was in one of Bernd's pieces. You could use a different blue and mix it with a different yellow, or same yellow. You can do whole charts and you'll come up with different greens. So let me just quickly demo. If I use this cobalt blue, or let me use the cerulean blue, that's very different. I'm going to put that over here, and I'll mix that with the ochre too. I could mix it with the Winsor yellow, but I'll mix it with the ochre. See, it's a more minty looking green compared to that one. And if I mixed it with the Winsor yellow, it would be a different green, yet again, a brighter green. So I'm gonna just go with this one for now. So I've got way too much water in here, but I'm just gonna fill in. I may have to mix up more because this is so diluted. And this is sketch paper again. I've got the watercolor paper that I will use when I get a little more serious. Okay, so that is my green. And that green I will mix with the red, and that will give me, that's how I want to dilute my red. So I'm going to take a bare spot on here. I'm going to put the red in there. And I'm going to mix some of that green in there. And again, I'm dabbing off my napkin because I've got, and I'll mix up a little more of this green. And then I'm gonna put that next to this red. And then start just pulling in a little red. Actually, I want the red to be dulled down. So just a little bit of green gives me that red. So there you are with a dulled down red. And I probably want a brighter one, so I would go back and add some more red to that. And I'm just gonna put it here. So you just play around so normally I would be playing up here just on a scratch paper, whatever, till I came up with the color I want. And then I would put it in my chart. And you could do that chart similar to the little charts on Berdt's thing, where you went in different directions, or maybe continue out with two, whatever you want. It's your time to play. And now I'm gonna dull the blue. And I will dull the blue. If you know what, I'm gonna dull it with the red, and that's gonna give me a purple, a dulled down purple. So I'm gonna put that just red over here. I'm gonna add more blue because it's the blue that I want to dull down. And I'll add a little more of that red to it. And this isn't the exact contrast to blue. The normal contrast to red would be green. Let me just find another spot here, and let me put this down because I'm not doing the best job here. I'm gonna clean this. Do a better job. But what I suggest is do a big chart similar to that little chart I have and play with it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of blue in, or a little bit of red. And that'll give me a purplish. And I want that here. But if it's not an exact contrast. Okay. So here we go. And it's kind of a purplish, and I like that color.
Kristi? Kristi,
Yes,
are you using the micron to outline the versos?
I would not for Bernd. I did this so you could see it.
Oh, I see. Thank
But
you.
when I do my my good version, it's pencil, and I just didn't think you could see that too well. And let me talk, so that's color. Let me just say a little more about it, and then I'll talk about this transferring the letters and all that. So I would do charts of this till you come up with the colors you want. I like these colors, but these are not the colors I'm going to use on this. What I thought I would do is I'm going to write the word Valentine on here. Eventually, I'm right now just playing around with it, but the colors, it wouldn't be the same colors that I used when I first took this class. Let me find where I put that again. I would not use just these colors, but I do want to use reds, and I don't need blues, and I would have a little bit of purple in there. These colors I would love for another letter, but not for this one. So I'm just showing you how to mix these and you play around with those. And Carrie asked, do the pencil lines show through? So here's what Peter said. So when I did this, so what I did, I drew my letter. And then, and I did it, this is my scratch paper, my sketch paper. I drew it in pencil. But then I wanted to transfer it. And I could have put graphite on the back. I could have rubbed a soft pencil on the back and then traced it. But I thought I'm just going to trace it using a light box. So I inked over this with Micron. And it's an old Micron. It's not the best job, but it served its purpose. I put this on top of a light box. I could see the lines through. I traced them. And when I did this, I used a mechanical pencil. I wanted light lines, but I still pressed too hard and the lines were too dark. So I got out a kneaded eraser and I just dabbed it. I just pressed it till I got all those lightened up so that I don't have dark pencil lines showing through when I paint. And then, but what Bernd did, per Peter Thornton, at first he erased his pencil lines. In his early work, you can see that the pencil lines are pretty much gone. But Peter said later in his career, he seemed to not mind them being there. And a lot of times he left the pencil lines. So I was looking at this piece, as I said, I did this when I was new. I was looking at this today and I still had pencil lines on there. And where I was really looking was when all these whites come together, I had lines here. And they're all going to come together. So I didn't really want those lines, but I had lines all through the thing. So today I went through and I erased the pencil lines. This was done in early 2005. And I'm just now erasing the pencil lines. But I did these really light because sometimes when you paint over, the pencil lines don't erase. Sometimes the watercolor seals those pencil lines. There's a pencil line right there. And there's one there. So I just made them really light and then I will erase, and some may stay because they're done with paint over them. But again, Bernd later started leaving the pencil lines, so it's completely up to you. I don't think, because Bernd's colors were so subtle, I don't think it would look good to have these inked lines. But you know what? This is a scratch paper I have. I can play around with this when I get the colors I want. I can start there before I go to my watercolor and see what I think. But I really prefer just the white lines, and that's what Bernd had. And his were much thinner, much neater than mine. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Any questions? So we use neutral tint. That is a watercolor. It's called neutral tint. We can use that to mute these. And that's, I think, the easiest way. And if you use a warm neutral tint or a cool and you're using the same one on all your colors, you're going to get colors that go together. But the other way was to use your contrasting colors. So red and green are contrasting colors. You look at the color wheel. I should have brought that here. Look at the color wheel. What is opposite the color wheel will be your contrasting color, and just put a touch of it. I put way too much on these. And how about any of the others who were in Peter's class? I think there was a third method, but you can look at Berndt pieces. Let me get that book out again. And you can see where it looks like he tinted. Well, like this. That looks like a tint of this darker red. So you can add white to make a tint. You can also add more water and have it more watery. I added too much water to my blue and it made it lighter. But a true tint would be to add white, and you could you can get colors that are this dark to start with, but you could also add black to them to darken them. Does anybody else have any other suggestions for making more somewhat muted colors? These colors aren't that muted. He just took the edge off of them. Just that one picture, to me, those are beautifully vibrant, but they aren't straight red. And in the book, they look, I think, on my screen, a little brighter, but they're just toned down enough to be beautiful. And all these colors just go beautifully together. And there you've got your contrast again of the green and the red.
Kristi, how about applying the color and then wiping it off with a towel or, paper towel, blotting it to make it more transparent?
So that's not the way I would do it, but you can certainly try it. What I've learned are glazes. So you bring up a good point. You could put on a really light coat of watercolor, and then you could put a contrasting or something over it to tone it down. But then again, I have enough trouble being messy without applying two colors. That wouldn't be the one I would choose, but that certainly would be an option. And you can get variations in color if you add glazes over the top. That wasn't one Peter showed to us, but definitely with this, these are made to experiment. And look at these beautiful details on this. The more I look, he brings out these colors. Here's the greens, and there's those beautiful reddish, pinkish. Any more comments or questions? I'm definitely going to try to finish one that I can share. But I can see this could keep me busy for quite a while, coming up with different ideas. And when we did our first lessons in our Roman study group, we talked about letters. First, we had done the structure of the letters. Let me see if I've got it right here. I'm looking for the skeleton. So we talked about the straight letters. But then after that, we talked about you can curve the stem slightly, subtle curves in there, makes them a little more lively. You can have a little bit of slants. You can change, you can move things around and move things up and down. We talked about just making them lines of more lively words. And those who took with Sherry, Susie Behringer this past weekend and the weekend before, she did a lot of that. You can play around with that in Bernd. So here's these real formal ones. So just like those basic skeletons, really formal, but then you can just, well, I think maybe it was Peter did a lot of playing around with versals and just sketchy and curved lines, just very different. I think most of Bernds were more formal. Trying to get them out and see. But definitely add curves. Just don't stick with all straight lines. Add curves. That is what adds interest. Curves, diagonals. Here's diagonals. That adds interest to these pages. And look at this one. It just, that line, let me bring it up here. There's a curved line in there instead of a straight between the two. And it doesn't show on the screen, on my screen at least, but those are slightly different shades. The inner little space is a little purpler than this red. So he just did so much with just very subtle variations. So this is sky's the limit with this. Play around. As you saw with mine, my other one I did, I had added copper plate to it. So whatever your favorite hands are, and these are versals that we will do in study group. So I did that. And in fact, I did this for a class I was taking at the local community college. And we were studying versals. And we were going to decorate them. So I just played around with this for, I used Bernd as my inspiration for this. And I want to do this over and spread this copper plate out more. And I was going to look, but I think pretty much Bernds was all pretty formal. But he has, you know, just different letters in here. And as you saw earlier, he has copper plate. I don't know where it is in here right now, but there were copper plate letters in here. Okay, and then we have any rhyme or reason to how to get the geometric shapes and white lines. So I think, I don't remember Peter talking about rhyme or reason, but it breaks it up and adds interest and makes it easier to paint. So Sherry Thornton, Peter's wife, she studied with him originally. He was her inspiration. She's got different work, but you can definitely see Peter's influence on it. And when we took classes with her, her reason for breaking them up was to make it easier to paint. If it gets too big, it gets blotchy, etc. So that was her reason for breaking these up. And the shapes, you don't want the same shape. So here's these curves and he's got straight lines, but there he echoes curves. And he's got some script in here, but we talked about some of the shapes being repeated. So this seems to be his little signature, the palettes in many of these, but he repeats colors. So here's these colors up here, repeated down here, the orange, red, orange. It's tinted, it's not the exact same one. It's tinted probably with white and a little bit of maybe neutral tint, or they probably didn't have neutral tint then, some other color to dull it down more. And then here's his band of letters, and in the center of some of those two, he's got tinted versions. This looks like this same color, but tinted with a little bit of white. And then it looks a little bit grayed over here, like he's adding something to gray it down. And then he's got the tint of that here. So go ahead and get those pictures off. Pinterest is a good place. I think that's where a lot of the ones I found were. And I just did a Google on Bernd graphic artist or Bernd calligrapher. I think he wasn't a calligrapher, but obviously he knew how to make letters. So he came up with those searches.
I think he was a typographer.
Well, he's billed as a graphic artist, and I do remember Peter telling us that.
Mm.
You know, maybe he did design a type, but basically his day job was a graphic artist. And the book does talk. You know what? I will write up a summary of what the book talks about, and I'll send that out. It does talk about his history.
Mm.
Any other questions? It's about time, but we can answer any questions. Okay. So
Thank you so much, Kristi.
yeah, thank you all for coming, and let's see some Bernd letters. And I don't know if we want to do something different for June. I think we'll take July and August off, but I wonder if we want to continue with Bernd letters in June. Why don't you let me know what you think, and I can share more information and more samples of his work. If you like this. So just let me know, send me an email or whatever on what you'd like to do.
It would certainly give everybody enough time to keep playing and bring them back so we
Yeah.
can see.
That's what I'm thinking. That's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this just, you could play forever with this, but
Yeah.
okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and close, and have a good month, everyone. And take a look at the calendar for Society for Calligraphy, see if any of those events interest you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
And I'll send out the recording soon.
Thank you very much, Kristi. It was delightful.
Thank you, Kristi.